take a minute of your time, as this meeting is only 90 minutes long, and that's not nearly enough time for a meeting due to the financial state of our district. But I do think it's important that you are presented with a list of questions that have been asked over the past year by the community, and we still don't have answers for those. The lawsuit's over. We keep hearing about transparency, so now there is no reason not to get those answers. During the last 2 finance meetings, members of this committee have asked some challenging questions, and I appreciate that. I'm hoping that by giving you the list of questions that many people have asked in the past, you'll be able to get those answers for us. And I'm also hoping that you'll review this list and then going forward respond to with the answers to these questions at each meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right. Item C, approval of the May 24th, 2016 meeting minutes. I understand there were some problems with everyone not receiving those. I'd like to table that till next meeting so everyone has time to fully review those.
I had a few corrections to the minutes.
All right. Actually, can we just bring those next time when we bring them forward? Because not everybody's had a chance to review them, because I understand not everybody received them.
Could I potentially email them? So they
Yeah,
can
go ahead.
incorporate
Yeah,
it
email them out.
into
Yeah,
the-
sure. No, absolutely.
Good.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. Item D, number 1, monthly financial statements. Steve, you want to take that?
Have them all in front of you. The financial statements with 11 months completed for the year. And we're 91.67% through the fiscal year. And I actually used that figure to kind of gauge how the budget is faring and how we may end the year. And again, you really have to concentrate also on the percentage of total revenue or percentage of total expense in a financial statement. The second column in judging, and you have to know a little bit about property taxes and federal aid and when things may come in at different times. In the last 3 items, especially in the education fund, we're pretty much at 50% or below 50% in those last 3 areas. And that's because in the past, the registration fees, I think, were due a little bit earlier, April 15th or so. Now they're due June 15th, but people have been paying. They should come in this fiscal year similar to how they've come in the past, but they're just going to come in June rather than April and May like in previous years. So are there any specific questions on the financial statements that you may have? And again, Mr. Murphy, you're new to committee. This is we have a financial statement for each fund, and it's just an executive summary financial statement, and we use it for as it relates to cash flow, and then also how the budget's faring this year. And I've always used a document like this to not only see how this goes this year, because we're always in the development of next year's budget too. Come April, May, we're already starting to try to develop next year's budget and financial projections. So we'll look at financial statements like these to see, do we need to change the budget for next year based upon the performance for this year.
So when you develop the budget for the coming year, are you just looking at what was spent, or are we actually doing more of a zero-based budget where you're kind of rebuilding the budget?
No, it's not going to be 2%, 3%, 4%. It's going to be analyzing pretty much every line item and say, is that still necessary? Are we still going to spend like that? We also, from the building budgets, there's requests for the building budgets operationally. How much you're going to pay for officials? How much money you need for paper, and that's charged to the building. So there's requests as well as it needs for the budget process. But I've always looked at budgeting zero-based. But zero-based for a company is a little bit different than zero-based for a school. We're going to be educating in the same manner next year as we educating this year. So we're not going to be cutting. I don't think there's anticipated any cutting of programs or anything like that. So when you say zero-based for school districts, we know for the most part that we're going to spend so much for officials for athletic events. Our teacher salaries are going to be X. just because that's the process.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but also with the budgeting process, some of those other scenarios really do need to be talked about, right? I mean, if we're projecting losses or are adding losses, not saying you need to cut programs, but I'm saying you really have to talk about all of your options, right? You need to have those discussions in your budget hearings, I would think. So I think it does help to build that budget item by item, and so you can really have those discussions item by item, program by program, expense by expense.
And you'll be seeing that in, the budget process. The budget is due by the end of September. It has to be public display 30 days before that, and it's called a tentative budget. And then during that tentative budget process, anybody can, the public can come in and in the past, and I think I may be here in July and August too. So if anybody had a question on it, they could always come into the office and ask questions related to the budget.
Yeah.
That's the tenet of the budget process. Just because there's a budget hearing, that doesn't mean somebody can't ask questions. And certainly this committee will see the numbers well in advance of finally adopting the budget.
Right. I just know those state forms are at a fairly high level. I think people will have a lot of questions as they're looking at the new numbers. And anytime we're budgeting, right, you need to consider a lot of different scenarios. Obviously, gone through that this year with making the decision to close the school. That had to be difficult. I'm sure you had to consider a lot of options. And I think, as you're probably picking up, reporting is a big thing for me. There's no such thing as too much detail, at least in my mind, or for the level of this committee, at least. But that's just my thoughts on it.
And I think you're right. I think that we need to make sure we look at the granularity that we need to make the proper decision. But on the same hand, we've got a lot of low-hanging fruit and things that we want to get through here. And I think it's very important that us as a committee stay focused on the things that the board has tasked us with and moving forward with those and giving you the detail and granularity that you need. So, and I think and I know I'm new to the committee, and I look forward to it. Anything else on the monthly financial statements? Any comments?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to go back to this year, and based on this, the cash flow model, you're projecting that there'll be a negative $2 million deficit this year. Are you taking into account then all the where we are with taxes and I know you can't really take into account the state aid because that's kind of a variable, but definitely the taxes that we've collected to date so far.
Yeah, well, you said the deficit of the education fund.
I'm looking at I was looking at the whole operating.
The whole operating fund. Yeah, that's assuming we're going to pay off all the TAWs, which we cannot end the year in the negative fund balance in our total operating fund. So if the last property tax distribution is the 26th, so we'll know what the property taxes we'll have by the 26th. By the 27th or 28th, we'll know if we're going to get any more. If we're getting a fifth payment on the mandated categoricals. The state never tells us when they're going to pay mandated categoricals. They just decide to do it at the last minute. And many times they'll do it on June 29th or June 30th, all of a sudden. But we'll get like 2 days notice that they're actually going to make a distribution of the fifth payment. So we're going to be, we'll be looking at the cash flow up to that last few days, and we'll just be able to we'll decide how much we can pay off in TAWs and what we can't. But that's just, again, this is just,
I would say
this is also just one scenario of potential. It's not my really projection. It's just one potential scenario cash flow that has some chance of ending the year like that.
I was pointing out that it's a $2 million deficit, meaning revenue taken in. I wasn't looking at the
Oh, you
cash
weren't looking at the
balances.
cash flow?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that $2 million, that's just one scenario. it has a potential. And I don't know if I can say that's the best case scenario or not. It is one scenario that I worked out that has some reasonable assumptions to it.
So what are the assumptions that you're making on the revenue side? For example,
Well, the revenue side,
in the education fund, where you have
Yeah.
32% of the year's revenue.
well, it ties out that we're expecting 100% will come in. And that in the education fund, in order for us to get 100% of the revenue, we'll need 32% to come in June of the total budget, which I think is possible. And although historically it's been 18.1, the last 2 months have been 18.1 to 19.4%. This year it's we're projecting we're at 13.2 and then 32%. I think it's possible that we could receive 100% of our revenue in our operating funds.
Do you have any, and this might not be a fair question right now, but do you have any ideas about why we only received 13% in May, and typically we're receiving 18%? I think it's registration. I can't say that definitively. I haven't pushed the math on that, but if I would say that's probably due to registration. I just had one general question on the expenditures when it lists purchase services. What's included in purchase services versus any of these like supplies?
One of our biggest purchase services is GCA. That's a purchase service.
Landscaping.
Landscaping services, anything that has to do with not supplying a product, a direct product. It's a
That would
service.
include like HVAC contractors?
Yeah. Repair and maintenance is typically a purchase service as compared to a supply or capital outlay. So professional services, auditing, purchase service.
At the first meeting, we had a discussion about the reports and putting more detail on them. I think maybe one quick and potentially very easy thing you could do is for the expenses on these reports, just give it to us by account code. So then, I'm assuming we'd be able to see the difference between, the audit versus utilities versus educational types of contracts. Not that I'm that familiar with your accounts, but obviously each line in the expense category is made up of many accounts. I think seeing those accounts laid out would help answer questions, just as Mr. Lucetti asked. Would you agree that's a fairly easy query to run, or thing to do?
In the current system, no. I mean, to hand do financial statements of this nature in the current system, no.
Right, but
in the new system, possibly.
These are rolled up, so the statements you have here are summarized. I'm talking about, starting at the beginning with the detail and just presenting more of that detail. So,
well, actually, the detail, these are all hand typed in from queries from our current system. Our current system cannot produce a system.
you would have to run a query by
everything,
account
and
for
then I would have to
utilities.
hand key in, all those numbers in there.
So
It's not as easy as, and we've asked for that in the past, and I think I agree with you, we need to get to there. But I think we need to make sure that we, obviously we're looking at what we've got here, and then, your suggestions to improve them, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to look at them going forward, but obviously with the transitions to Skyward and everything else. And,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
and,
I understand.
that's some things we can look
Yeah,
at.
just in my mind, if you're taking detail and summarizing it, it seems like
Sometimes,
you should be able to
and I know, and I can
detail.
tell you as board members, anytime those, when we got a summary or a number like this and we didn't understand, number looked off or whatever else, one of the things we would do is we would query and ask, how did you derive this number? What, give us the breakdown of this one fund or this one piece. And we would drill down into that. And I think that's what this committee needs to, be able to do, is
Yeah,
be able
absolutely.
to drill down into those and be able to see where the breakdown of each one of those numbers are if needed. And I think it's most fruitful to do that in email, prior to the meeting. If you've got a question on one, that we can do that.
And it's tough from a business manager standpoint to be prepared to answer any question related to all that detail.
Right.
That's tough
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and if you give it to them in advance, you can go ahead and
Yeah,
they'll just shoot you an email back saying, here's the breakdown, it's 1 million, 500,000 here, and that's how it all
And
broke
then,
down.
if you had a question on it, so that's why it's tough. And then I know I apologize for struggling with the cash flows last month, but that was due to nerves, not to not being an expert in this. That was just due to nerves.
All right, anything else on the,
There's a question. Yes.
one more, I'm sorry.
Has there ever been any discussion on the Board of Ed members having inquiry-only access to the financial statements, to the general ledger, possibly not in the current system, but in the new one? I know for our board members in Will County, they can request to have general ledger inquiry-only access as part of being a board member, and actually anybody can look at our GL because we have it posted online. Has there ever been any discussion on that? That would eliminate these kind of questions because you can look at it anytime you want. You can drill down to your auditing expense by month, by day, by invoice.
That may
by
be
month.
something I know that we've asked for when we looked at Skyward, but I know right now with the system that we have, that wasn't a possibility. Did we have ability to go into the office or query one of our professionals and ask those questions? Yes, and they have been asked. But we needed to, obviously have a system that was more internet friendly versus the old green screens that we had.
Yeah. I just throw this offer out. I work for a school, university. I could provide examples of reports that we use, that we rely on. I'd be happy to do that, just to give you some ideas for things you might want in the new system.
Okay.
And also, we last meeting we had a discussion about accruals, and I understand that we are not switching to accrual counting for this year. That's a big project with everything that's going on. But we talked about some down and dirty things that we could do, basically maintaining a list of invoices that are paid after June 30th that relate to fiscal year 16. I know by the time we get to the next meeting, it's going to be too late to ask for that. I just wanted to find out if that's something that we can get.
I think we could definitely talk. I just want to keep it because we are limited today on time a little bit.
Absolutely.
I'd love to talk to you more offline about that and get some of those ideas and get them penned down here so we can work them into what this whole committee's doing. If that's okay with you.
Yeah. I just know by our next meeting.
Yeah, no,
it's
let's sit down.
already July,
And I'll talk with
yeah.
you offline, and maybe it's me and Chris will sit down and have a meeting and talk about those things, see if we can get some of those things working.
Great.
Okay. Moving on, 2016-2017 custodial supply and dispenser bid. Who's taking this one?
Well, I'll take it.
Steve, Rich.
Go ahead. I'll take it, Rich. We conducted this bid, and we did have a fair amount of bidders. And it was a little bit complicated because we were bidding out dispensing units as well, and then some companies, like for example, Expert, they bid contingent upon the bid was set up so that it could be a line item bid, that you couldn't bundle your products and say if you want the dispensers you got to buy everything, so you couldn't bundle. Expert bundled, so they kind of eliminated themselves from the bid by bundling their products together. North American, for whatever reason, they bid on a 3-year. They wanted a 3-year contract on, which had no bearing to the bid process as well. So we couldn't award the bid to North American on a 3-year contract, especially with paper products. They change every year. I don't see how they could they set their prices. I think they expected us then to take whatever price they gave us in years 2 and 3. So and then Valdez, not by default, Valdez came in very good prices, very low. And they're just one thing I didn't put in here is Valdez's prices for the dispensing units were with installation. And then, for instance, Expert, I just listed their dispenser price, but with installation they added $7 for both types of dispensers, which made their price higher than Valdez's for the roll top dispenser and just a little bit cheaper on the tissue dispenser. But we're recommending it pretty much on a line item bid. And then there's one correction to the memo. We put in expert for the one item, and it's actually the next column over, it's PCS. So PCS will be recommending, a new document for the board, will be recommending PCS for just that one line item, very small amount, rather than expert.
Any questions or comments on the bid?
Just on these dispensers, I mean, what's the life expectancy of these dispensers? And why are we switching them out now?
Life expectancy is probably 5 years. We're switching them out now because the dispensers that we have are like a proprietary dispenser or a certain type of paper. That paper is very expensive, and the dispensers are battery operated, so it takes more maintenance. And this is just a way to a universal dispenser, so we have flexibility in where we buy our products from.
And
So you could use any of the, next year, if the, whatever this is, 9-inch 2-ply paper at Tri-K is cheaper, since it's universal, you guys won't.
Correct.
And the payback on the dispenser is less than a year. Well, the pricing, we actually priced out the old paper products, which is in the middle. I crossed them out in the middle. So that's the pricing of our current dispensers and the products. And so we did the math on it, and I think the payback is 9 months for the dispenser. So we'll actually save money this year compared to buying our old products, even with new dispensers.
What's that, the lay or the GP?
Both of those. Both ones.
Those are
those are the two different paper products. Yeah. So we just got pricing just so that we can see for ourselves, and anybody asks, so we can demonstrate that there's a payback, a very short payback on new dispensers.
Any other comments? All right. Moving on, resolution authorizing inter-fund loan. Steve, you're on a roll.
Oh, yeah, the
Loan.
interfund loan is, the school code allows the school board to approve loans between certain funds, certainly between education. And not all funds can loan amongst each other, but the one we're proposing today certainly can. Education fund can loan to the operation and maintenance fund. And with the AUP and taking money out of the operation and maintenance fund and putting into the capital projects fund, that left us with a shortage of funds in the operation and maintenance fund. And so we're proposing to the school board to loan $6 million from the education to the operation and maintenance fund. And by school code, the school board has 3 years to pay off that loan, and in our financial planning, we'll certainly work, definitely work, and I think we'll be able to work it out so that we can pay it off, certainly within the 3-year time frame, if not 2 years, and that will require, we need to put it in our file. It's a requirement. It could be another separate resolution. So at the time we feel we can afford to pay the loan back, we'll bring it to the school board with a resolution similar to the resolution today to pay back that loan.
Questions, comments?
Not directly to the loan, but the $5 million that was moved out for the AUP to the Capital Projects Fund, what can that be used for now? Does that have to pay back bonds? Is that limited to capital purchases?
We're going to, for the referendum, it's still going to be whatever the referendum question was, and that was approved, which was build and equip and repair our facilities.
Any of the four
facilities.
Yeah, construction purposes.
Construction purposes, okay.
Yeah.
Build, equip, and repair.
Capital improvements.
And there are some capital improvements, I know that are in the pipeline. Some of them we've been putting off a little bit. We need to address, and that'll be coming to this committee.
Okay.
That's upcoming attractions.
Okay. So I'm assuming paying that money back is not an option, right? The $5 million.
In our initial discussions with bond counsel, no, it's passed, it's a resolution, those bonds are being held by bond holders, and to put it back was the appropriate measure, and then use it on capital projects is what we were.
So that's just like with the refunding, basically, when you refund bonds, you're not actually paying the bonds in the hands of the bondholders, you're setting aside money to pay them when they become due. Is that, is that true?
That's correct.
Well, plus the 5 million is not, we need the funds in there for capital projects. I mean, they're necessary for capital projects.
There's quite a few capital projects.
Yeah.
Catherine, and you're, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is just ignorance on my part, but when I'm used to looking at resolutions that say, yes, you instruct the treasurer to transfer the actual cash, but also included on here, on the resolutions that I'm familiar with, is the accounting, how the accounting is going to work within the funds, so that the people that are going to vote on the resolution know how it's going to be recorded, and I guess kept in the file to make sure that the accounting is going to be handled properly within the 3-year period. Is that just not written here? Is that just assumed that, the way the resolutions are written?
Like the resolution for the AUP had detailed account numbers.
Yes, this is something that we will have to track internally, I mean, and continue to revisit. Steve, you ran this past
well, we probably could be more detailed, but just to describe how the process will work, there in the state budget form as well as the AFR, there is due to and due from loans.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
and so the loans will be reported on the AFR as a loan outstanding, and it will be a liability on the operation maintenance fund. So it'll be reported.
And the other thing is too, is the funds themselves are very restrictive on what we can spend money on, so those things are,
Right, so if one were to inquire on these two funds with the new system that we discussed earlier, then you would be able to see all the interfund transactions, right? So that you could tell, that someone can tell you're paying off this $6 million down this year, you pay down $3 million, and now you have, I'm just looking for tracking.
They'll be listed as a liability
Okay.
in our system, which is, it has it in there. And it'll be, the balance sheet will show it. We don't see balance sheets here, we're just providing, income statement, revenue.
but on the fund
expense.
breakdowns, you do see that.
When your auditors come in, do they normally request a listing of all the year's resolutions so they can actually go through and see what was going on and double check and make sure that it's being accounted for properly? I don't know, do you know?
Yeah, well, typically, auditors typically read all the board minutes. They read the minutes, so any resolution would be in the board minutes, and they'll ask for it separately as well, but
Okay.
they typically, every auditor I always work with, read the board packets and the board minutes for the
Right.
40
And rather than
months.
assuming, my opinion would be that, obviously if we can direct the auditors to have something as specific as that, normally is done, but I would like to, see those specific things in there so I don't get caught by something. I appreciate that.
I mean, I agree absolutely that, the more detail you can put in there when the auditors come, they are trying to tick and tie everything back and forth. So, yeah, they can go read the minutes, and yeah, they can pull the adjustments in the system.
Right.
But let's not make it harder for them to tie everything together.
And I think that's where developing that audit and working with your guys' expertise as far as that audit and what they should be looking for and how to scope that, I think is very important. Chris?
I was just going to ask, when you say financial planning for how we're going to pay this back, does that mean that we're going to have to change how the allocations in the tax levy are?
Possibly, yeah. The way the tax levy process works, you have to be very careful, and you got your right fiscal years and you levy 1 year. So the levy for 1 year actually hits 2 different fiscal years at different times. So you have to gauge if you adjust your levies, then how it would impact. And I'll be able to show that to you and show. I anticipate not doing a straight levy this year. To just say 2% or 1%, whatever is across the board. That It may net out to, you know, the CPI plus new, but it will be, some funds might go up 5%, some may go down 5% in our levy request. But it will still net out to whatever the tax cap allows.
I understand we don't have time tonight, but I just think for a future meeting, it would be great to just kind of have an educational session on how all that works. How, as a taxpayer, I pay my taxes, or my bank does. I don't know from a school district, you know,
The levy
what
process.
goes into it. Yeah.
Yeah, to give you an idea, I know the state legislature gives a course on it. It's 2 days.
Yeah.
For legislatures,
Yeah.
for legislators.
That's just a
It's
two-day
it's
course,
pretty
right.
in-depth. I mean, and as school board members, I know we all have, you know, got a crash course our first, when we were appointed on. There's a lot to it, but yeah, I think, you know, it may be very valuable to you to see, you know, how we do our levy and how we have to ask for things before the numbers are
At least at a
cemented.
higher level, so we kind
Yep.
of, you know, understand the philosophy behind how it works, how, I mean, let's face it, that's a huge
Well, it's a
line
huge
item.
piece
That's
of
all of our
revenue.
money.
Absolutely.
We should
Absolutely.
understand some detail on it.
I had that in an interview question one time, and they wanted me to describe the tax levy process. I struggled with that one. They hired me, but I really struggled in a very succinct way to describe the levy process. No, it's,
All right.
I would say it's an hour to 2 hour discussion, minimum on the levy and how it all plays out.
All right, moving on. Resolution approving budget line item transfers.
You're on a roll, Steve. Keep going.
Steve? Yeah, we're, the school board has the authority through the State Board of Education, I don't know necessarily school code, but, you know, through the State Board of Education to make line item transfers for the budget in the expenditure area, as long as it does it, as long as you're not moving over 10% of any particular fund. And then a full, typically, if you exceed the budget and from the expenditure standpoint, then that would be a full budget amendment. So a full budget amendment, it would be hearing, and we would present a new budget document to the entire school board, and there would be, you have to do a 30-day public notice. So that's a full amended budget. This is, one person can call this an amended budget, but ISB calls it line item transfers. So they differentiate between, because you're not increasing the expenditure budget in total for any fund. You're just, it's a net zero game, net zero budget, and net budget transfers that you're not adding anything to it. So I have here a memo, and there's a number of accounts that are being impacted. I try to put a very short description to the rationale behind why we're changing the budget. This would open it up to questions now.
And just for everybody's clarity on this is a transfer, unlike the last one, which was a loan from one to another. This is actually a transfer.
This is a transfer. It's only budget. Oh, and then we will also be doing making journal entries to move expenditures to align with the budget. But when we're moving expenditure, these are expenditures that already occurred, and we're just saying we originally charged it to this account, that's where it was budgeted. So we're moving the budget, but then we're also going to be moving expenditures as well.
So is it true it's all in the same fund? It looks like, is 10 the fund number?
Yeah, it's all the education.
So it's just really, it's the account code detail.
And you're getting a flavor of our account codes. So that is our account codes in our computer system. And our new system will be and this is the ISB code, and our new system the accounts will be in a little bit different order, but they'll be very similar looking to these accounts.
Chris, I was just going to ask, what falls under, because we're moving executive administration services?
Yeah, executive administration typically is superintendent services, Board of Education, executive is Board of Education superintendent, and some of these don't belong in that area. Copier supplies, software maintenance, so they shouldn't be charged to that account.
So when the budget was done, they weren't
Correct.
where you're moving it to. So this is just moving kind of this is just kind of changing the budgeted line item.
Budget line, and we're going to change, like, we need to charge the accounts to the appropriate accounts. That's something that's been cited in the past through our audit, that we're not following IPAM. We're not charging necessarily to the right account codes. So these are some of the bigger ones I've seen. You know, there might be some small ones, $500, but these are some of the bigger areas that are impacting us and our financial reports. And so this is try to get it more accurate.
Correct.
So it's
So,
corrective action. So
especially if we're
you're
comparing, if we're comparing, we want to, start comparing us to other districts. And I'm going to be comparing it to other people's AFRs or others' budgets. And so we need to align our accounts to as
Like
close as we
apples-
can to
apples
those
to
areas.
apples
So then we start
versus-
comparing, we can compare our budgets to other district budgets and where they're spending their money. But that's one of the reasons we try to be in accordance with ICANN.
7 of 11 of these are in driver's ed. Does this fix the reporting problem that I saw when?
I hope, yeah.
On how ISB picks it up on their reporting, so will those?
I hope so.
Anything else? All right.
Just unrelated, I'm sorry, I see the Skyward bill on there. Do you know how much we're paying? Is that like annual, the $125,000 for Skyward? Is that an annual cost?
I have to ask Dr. Murphy. I know we had the upfront costs, and then it's spread out over the next 5 to 10 years, but I can get you the breakdown.
We can get to the break. We've had that breakdown's been proposed and out.
It seemed cheap, so you had an upfront cost. Is that a capital cost? Is that on the balance sheet that we don't see? And we're just seeing maintenance cost here. So it looks like there's $125,000 a year.
Well, it's licensing and maintenance.
It's licensing maintenance.
Licensing and maintenance.
Was their initial payment for the software itself?
It's all bundled together.
It's all bundled
So the
together.
contract we had is bundled.
And we've done it 2 phases too, with, the student services and then the business office too, over a 2-year period. So-
And then Skyward also has all their support. So you have unlimited phone calls and technical support.
And we can get you, if that's still required offline, we can get you that breakdown of what that.
Actually, it seems cheap. I mean, used to paying quite a bit more. I work for DePaul University. It's millions, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I know we're not paying that.
No, it's not minutes.
All right. Building and grounds report, Rich.
At your places, there's a copy of the utilities and contractual maintenance report. On the back side of the first page, the bottom line says that we spent about $1 million less this year through April than we did last year through April. There's one thing I need to point out. Back on the front page, if you look at the water section, Village of Frankfurt, if we're working way north, the bill was much higher than it normally is. We were able to investigate. We found that there was a frost-proof silcock leaking at the stadium that was isolated. It hasn't been repaired yet. It's been isolated. I'm afraid that that leak is going to span into the next billing period, though, due to the fact that the meter read and the invoicing and processing here, there's a bit of a delay. So we put into place a new function with our building check, building inspection on every Sunday. Our maintenance men will do meter readings for us. We'll record those on Monday. We'll keep track weekly of the meter readings on all the water meters rather than relying on the village or waiting for the billing cycle to come through. Just wanted to point that out. On the second page, on the electricity and natural gas analysis, for electricity, we are complete through April. For natural gas through May. One thing to note, in May on natural gas, we've been typically spending about 30% less than last year. In May, we spent over 30% more. That's due to running of the cogen engines. 2 of them ran the entire month, and 2 of them ran a portion of the month, and I will have more on that as the data comes in. That's all I have.
Rich, one question with the overage at North. Did we talk to Village of Frankfurt about possibly getting any sort of refund for the sewer portion of that? Because obviously it doesn't go into the sewer.
I have not, but I will.
That's just a suggestion. I know it's not going to make us whole, but at least it will help. Any other comments? Questions? All right, other business?
So, we have an audit coming up. I think maybe that should be a standing agenda item to talk about the item, at least, or talk about the audit, at least before we get through it. Have the auditors been here on campus yet, or?
Met with Steve, and I would propose, I think it'd be appropriate to have them come and visit with this committee, even prior to starting.
That would be good, very good. Yeah, just based on my experience, it's going to be a more difficult audit than you're probably used to. Simply for the fact that you have a new firm, right there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done. But then I think they're going to have some of the same questions that a lot of people have, because obviously they're going to ask for any audits or a lot of type of work that was done over the years. So they're going to have a copy of the AUP. I'm sure they're going to be, seeing what's in the papers. They're going to see the article about board president signing things that he hadn't read. They're going to assume, obviously, a lack of control, and I think they're going to expand their testing quite a bit, or at least they should. So I think we can help, get through that process. I know I've been through a lot of audits. I've been through several investigations. I just think that's something we need to talk about, actually, probably more often than monthly.
But I think too, that's something that, obviously as we move forward too, I'll throw this out here. I mean, I'm open to any one of the members who would like to meet and talk about any concerns you have. I know I've reached out already publicly here with you, Norman, but anybody, and board members, if you'd like to sit down and sit in the boardroom and talk about what things that concern you on these things or things that you'd like to see. Obviously, we are restricted on this committee to what the board has designated as our function here and what we've been assigned. But obviously, within those parameters, we want to give you every piece of information that you need to make those proper decisions.
Yeah, and it's more than, I feel like we should be assisting, like we could help actually get
Sure,
through that.
it unfortunately, though, it becomes a fine line between dealing with the day-to-day business, not interfering with the day-to-day business, but supervising versus doing. And I think that's just a fine line that any executive board at any level on anywhere has to weigh.
There's going to be some higher level, I think, decisions that'll happen. I do go before the audit committee at my place of employment. I'm familiar with the level of detail that they get into, but I think discussion on that will certainly benefit what's going on day to day with the audit.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second by Mr. Murphy. Thank you very much, everyone.